Relax, the keyboard is off, the press box is closed, and the mic is just getting warmed up as the guardian of the blue paint turned writer is about to enlighten us. The show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. For this week's show, be a fired flyer, big boy pants relieved of duties. Welcome to the Hockey Writers Inc. Join Lance and Steel as we bring you all the latest on the Flyers.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. As always, I'm your host, Lance Green.
And I'm your co-host, SteelFlyers. And I'm here to tell you, man, how you doing?
I'm okay. I don't know about the Flyers, but I'm okay.
Okay. I'm with you because on this week's episode, a fired flyer, big boy pants relieved of duties. And I don't think I even really need to say much more than that, do I? I think that pretty much covers it, does it? You know what I mean? The guy that came out and said, be a effing flyer, just got his big boy pants shipped on out of Philadelphia, along with Michelle Therrien as well. Okay? So, Lance, you wrote a really poignant article for the first article here, and it's all about enough is enough. The Flyers GM, Chuck Fletcher, has done everything in his power to help Vigneault succeed, and it's time to move on. And that was a very poignant article. And as we all know, Alain Vigneault has been fired. Now we've got Michael Yeo as the quote-unquote interim coach. For the Philadelphia Flyers, and then they brought Ian LaPerriere up for the game the other day because they were missing some guys and they needed, and there's no Phantoms games.
Yeah, I think Nick Schultz was up as well
for this game
for the player development coach.
Yeah,
stepping in for the defensive side. So yeah.
So okay, good gravy. I mean, what? Look, this was posted on FlyersNittyGritty.com a couple of days ago here, and obviously this was posted right around the time that Vigneault was fired. We all know it's old news. We're into game 2 now of the Yeo era for Philadelphia, and it's just not looking any better. At last report here, the game that we're doing now as we speak, the Flyers are losing to the Devils. So it's not getting any better. The team doesn't look any different for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. They basically just move the guys around and just move the guys around. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now you have Hayes back and you have Brassard back. But we'll see how it goes, how the new interim head coach is able to start to implement his own system if he ever does. He's only got probably one practice in under the being named interim head coach.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about this article. So this article I put a lot into it, and now it was written when it was all but written on the wall that AV was going to be fired.
This was right after the Tampa Bay game.
I believe so. So, and it talked about just how much Chuck Fletcher gave AV. And a lot of people are ripping on Chuck Fletcher for this. And, while I would not make the same sort of picks or signings or trades that he made this offseason, he did go out there and give AV guys in a sense.
He made a concerted effort.
Right. I mean, even from the start, when he signed AV, he went out there and gave him 2 head coaches, basically ex-head coaches, in Therrien and Mike Yeo. to
Yeah.
be his assistants. That's was kind of unheard of at the time, and spent a ton of money signing both AV and those guys to come in. And
Big time.
not only did he do that, but he brought in Kevin Hayes to a now pretty hefty contract of what, 7 mil plus $7 million a year for extensive amount of time, because he was AV's guy. He was the one that they wanted to build around and to help implement his system. But even more so this offseason, I think Chuck Fletcher brought in a bunch of guys that either played for AV before or played with Kevin Hayes before, who they were essentially building around.
Mm-hmm.
So with, Derek Brassard and Patrick Brown, Cam Atkinson, all these guys had links to, Keith Yandel, previously playing either for AV or with Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, maybe not my picks, maybe not your picks, maybe not the viewers' picks of who they would have brought in, but they were AV. So he was essentially putting all his eggs into AV's basket.
Yeah.
And, previously, AV has just been since after his first season, nothing but excuses in my mind. For 16 other teams last season, they were able to deal with the COVID, battles of people coming in and out of the lineup, and they were able to deal with the amount of games or not practicing at all that they had to deal with, or playing essentially all their games with no practice. Now, he complained big about that, and he just wanted to start this season off right and back to normal. But I got to say, 16 other teams figured it out, AV, and you weren't able to. So again, Chuck Fletcher went and not only brought in all your players that you wanted, but he essentially got rid of everybody that you disliked, everybody that didn't buy into the AV system, in Jacob Voracek right away, or Shane Gostisbehere. All those guys are gone. Nolan Patrick's gone. Felipe Myers is gone. All those guys weren't really AV type guys or AV type players. So he was able to bring in that two-way forwards and everything that AV likes, and still to no success. Obviously, this year, early on, the Flyers, and still to this day, the Flyers deal with injuries. But then again, so does every team out there. AV, it was one of the highest paid coaches in the league. And in my mind, I think he should have been able to right the ship, especially since Chuck Fletcher even brought in his number two man.
Yeah, Williams.
I forget. Yeah, Williams, Coach
Yeah.
Williams, in
Yeah.
to help him further implement his system and make that work.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, injuries shouldn't have been a problem. Now, if you can think back last year, Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, dealt without Nikita Kucherov for the entire regular season. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They dealt without Steven Stamkos for most of the season. He only played in maybe 30 games, roughly,
Right.
regular season games before the playoffs.
Right.
And guess what? They still managed to get into the playoffs until those players were able to get back healthy. If you look this year at the Pittsburgh Penguins, our rivals, of course, they've been without Evgeny Malkin for the entire season, and only have had Sidney Crosby back for a fraction of
Handful
that
of
season
games.
as well. Half of the game, if half of the games.
Not
But you
even,
know
because
what?
he was out for a good period, and then he was
He
out
was
for
out.
COVID, and
Right. He's been out, consistently been out. Both those guys had 3 Stanley Cups each, for them. So they're still what, fourth, I believe, last time I checked in
Yeah,
the
right.
Metro.
Yeah.
So they're still right in the running
Yeah,
without two superstars. So we don't
exactly.
even have superstars out right now. Kevin Hayes, in my mind, is a great player, but he's not a superstar.
I agree.
Uh, Ryan Ellis was amazing for the 4 games he's been in this season, but I wouldn't call him an elite player
I
like
agree.
Malkin or Sidney Crosby, or in my mind Steven Stamkos or Kucherov. So
Yeah.
excuses, excuses, excuses after all this, and I believe by this time AV has simply lost the team, lost the respect, and he simply had no answers. If you listen to him in those last few games, he was simply defeated. He did not have an answer of what to do or how to get this power play going, or how to get the team scoring goals on a 5-on-5, or how to write their defense. And personally, I believe that he misused players a lot. Nick Seeler was a big call up and was playing well for us, but he made him play the wrong side. NAK has done pretty well since he's gone to Colorado, scoring some goals. That's what he was in juniors. But here, he was made to be something he wasn't. He was made to play the wrong side. Uh, and he was made to be a grinder when he was more of a goal scorer, and thus really developed him some really bad habits that he's still having in for the Avalanche, when he took a cross-checking penalty that resulted in a Flyers goal in their last game versus us. So I really think that where Hackstall before him may have thought too much of his bottom 6 players and played them a little too much. AV, his reign has just been misuse of players, and I really think Claude Giroux needed to stay at center. He's older, but he's beneficial and better at center in my mind. He has more to offer the team. Just same kind of thing. Justin Braun. Justin Braun is a third pairing defenseman. Why was he being used as a first pairing defenseman so much? Yes, you might not have had one, but you needed to come up with a better answer than how old is he? 34, 35, something like that. Old defenseman trying to play first pairing minutes when he's never been a first pairing defenseman in his career. Just a lot of misuse of his players. And that's kind of what saw him out the door. And good riddance to, Terrian as well. I never heard any good things from players about his personality and how he treated his players. He never really had a great respect from his players, from what I've been told or what I've seen, and was really never able to get the power play going. So, in saying that, there's a list of other coaches that I've had in this article, one of which was already signed for to be a new coach of the Vancouver Canucks. So I really don't know where this team is looking to for their next head coach, or how quickly they will be trying to fill that spot and bump Mike Yeo back. But from what I hear is they're really looking for a defensive coach, quick, fast, in a hurry. But I don't really see that as well if they're going to bring in a new head coach, and why they wouldn't want him to be part of that, picking his staff. So
Yeah.
confusion all around in my mind. I really don't see this team in general having a clear direction. Like Chuck Fletcher even said, just doesn't have any direction of where they're going to go. A lot of question marks in my mind.
Okay. Uh Here's where I'm going to start. Um Over the last few weeks, I've been eating a lot of crow because I was overcritical of exactly all the points that you made about AV. There were too many excuses. There were too many this, too many this, too many this, too many this. But yet other teams were able to figure it out. I called it at the end of last year. I said that he should have gone at the end of last year. Um, that would have changed how the offseason would have gone because then I think they would not have been building around Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So decisions are being made incorrectly all the way throughout the entire organization. Okay. And I'm going to just say that. I'm going to say that a lot of information from your article, but just everything that I've seen, the press conferences that I've listened to since he's been part of this team, and I really, unfortunately, I was hoping more for Quinville before I knew anything about what he
right
was into. Okay, so I'm kind of glad that we, dodged that bullet. Oh my gosh! But I really felt, and I too believe that he would have been more of the better coach to come in here to Philadelphia and do that.
I mean, look what he did for Florida when he was there. So
okay, and he had a lot. I think he had a couple of different pieces to work with in Florida than what is here in Philadelphia. When Ron Hextall came to this team, he was basically handed a big giant steaming pile of goo. He was so far over the cap that he couldn't do spit. Okay. My knock on him is that, yeah, he filled up the cupboards and he filled up the farm team, but the quality of players that he filled them up with is why this team is failing right now. Because when you have guys that you went out and got like Ellis, Broussard, and the fact that we still have to claim guys off of waivers because we don't have the guys to call up that are good enough to put on a freaking NHL sweater, that's a problem.
Sure.
That is a huge problem. I don't care about 5'11", 185-pound guys. I said this when we first started doing this show, that, look, I got nothing against Claude Giroux. I got nothing against a guy who's 5'11" and 185 pounds, who plays like he's 6'11" and weighs 300 pounds, because that's how Giroux is. He's all heart, right? So would I like to have a couple of guys on the team like that? You bet. But there just aren't. And when you constantly are putting guys up there that are 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", and under 200 pounds, you're getting crushed by every single team in the league, defensively, offensively. Secondly, you're playing in a system where, just like you said, Lance, guys are not being put into positions of success. What are you doing? Why are you putting the same lines out there night in and night out and expecting different things to happen? Why is the power play still the same power play with Provorov, who should never even be on the power play, and Giroux always in the same position on the power play? You never see JVR out front, which is where he should be. Okay? You never see guys pinching at the ends. There's always pucks that go zinging by because they're not pinched up against the boards. They're all in deep. Okay? That's not, when you watch other teams' power plays, those two guys that are back there are responsible. They keep the puck in. They keep the power play going. We don't have that. The Flyers are not big enough, fast enough, and strong enough to win the dump and chase. You can't continue to play the dump and chase because you lose the race to the puck.
Dump and chase is elementary in my mind anyway. I believe I don't even teach my youth hockey teams when I'm coaching them a dump and chase. I don't believe in it. If you have possession of the puck, there's no way that you
Why
should
would
be
you?
that you should throw the puck into the zone and then chase after it. You need to be able to have the skill enough to skate in or the speed enough to skate by somebody and carry
Exactly.
it into the zone.
Every
Um,
single time. Every
right.
single time the Flyers skate the puck in, there is an 88% chance of a shot on goal when they skate the puck in.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and to touch on a couple of points you made, yeah, depth. Depth is a big thing that the Flyers don't have. They thought they did, but what happened when Kevin Hayes went down with injury? They thought they were going to put Morgan Frost in at the beginning of the year, and he wasn't ready yet. So
what?
what they have to what they
Hold
have to go
on.
do?
He's not ready yet? Morgan
No.
Frost wasn't ready yet? Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's new. But what they do, they had to sign a 34-year-old Broussard and a 37-year-old Nate Thompson to come in and fill out the roster because they didn't have any prospects ready to step up into that void. Okay.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and to touch on your undersized players, I'm okay with an undersized player, but they darn sure better make up for their size with skill, like a Johnny Hockey or uh, the rat,
Giroux
the
or
rat
Danny
from
Briere.
yeah, Danny Briere or the rat from up in Boston. What are you gonna do? But those guys are amazing players in their own right that make up for their lack of size with pure skill. So the Flyers, like you said, don't have that. They don't have the speed. They don't. They're not oversized. If they were oversized and crushing players for their lack of speed, that's one thing. But they don't have size or speed.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. You rattled off in what we're going to talk in your about your the next article that we're going to talk about here, but you rattled off quite a large number of draft picks that the Flyers have had over the last, quite a few years. And in over those years, they've had a number of draft picks in the first round, some decent selections of draft picks that nothing's panned out for the most part. There's been a couple, you know, that you're every once in a while the squirrel gets lucky and gets the nut, right? So 3 out of the last 11 is not a very good number. You know what I mean? And that's why I was like so upset and was was so disappointed in this team when they didn't fire AV at the end of last season, when he came out and made all those excuses and everybody was like, well, how much stock did Fletcher put into last season? Obviously not a lot because AV was still the coach. Okay. I felt that they should have put more stock into it because clearly there's a lot more wrong with this team than just the coach.
For sure. For sure. I think end of last season, I think I've said this before, but I think it was a little early for Fletcher to come out and say that he made a bad choice and fire AV then. But what did he do this offseason? Like I said, he went out and dumped more into AV's system and gave him everything he needed to succeed. Did he give him an amazing 50-goal score? No, he didn't. He doesn't have the cap space to do that. Okay, people, who is going to take on Giroux's $8.25 million salary a week before the season starts? Who's going to take on broken Kevin Hayes or a JVR who has 2 goals so far this season. Who's going to take on that $7 million salary? You can't do that. He did a lot with what he had. He created cap space. He got rid of players that didn't fit the system, and he brought in players that did fit AV's system. He set him up to succeed in the best way that AV thinks that he could succeed. And he didn't do that. So by all means, he got fired, and rightfully so in my mind, because I think that his time was up here. Do I think that's right every 3 years or so to fire a coach? No. I think there's stems more into it, which I'm working on an article to kind of prove that. I won't give too much away about that, but in the coming days or week or so, we'll see what I was getting at in that aspect as well. It's bigger than just the coach, like everybody says. It's bigger than just the GM aspect of signing players and drafting players. So we'll get into that. We'll get into it. But I think this, in a nutshell, I think this whole organization really needs to be stripped down and broken up. I don't think it was when Hextall was here. I believe they didn't pump a lot into it because they had to wait, like you said, Steel, to get rid of bad contracts, to free up cap space to bring other people in. And even when he did have the cap space, there wasn't a whole lot of players out there to bring in.
That's true.
They had to bring in JVR, the only really 30-goal scorer out there. And, you know, in my mind, he wasn't the player that I wanted to see come back.
Yeah, right.
He had success in Toronto because of the players that he was playing with. But he doesn't have those kind of players here. There is no player here. Like I said, you know, last show and with some other articles, in 15 or 20 years since Giroux has been drafted and prior to him, and since then, there's been no Giroux come up. Sean Couturier, yes, you know, a great player, a Selke Award winner. Provorov, a good defenseman, not a Norris Trophy winner. You know, Carter Hart, a goalie that could be and was expected to be a phenom, but isn't quite there yet, or might not ever be if the Flyers continue on this way of not supporting him. And you know, there's a lot to go wrong with this team. There's a lot that is going wrong with this team, and if they don't fix certain problems and aspects behind the scenes stuff that is with this team, a lot is going to continue to go wrong. And I just can't deal with it anymore. They need to strip it all down. They need to look deeper than what they have been doing. So,
you know, look, I've been watching this team since the early 90s, and which means that I've lived through the Bob Clark era and the Paul Holmgren era. And I watched Bob Clark just give away every asset to try to get that one last player. And I was so frustrated with that, because that was always like the worst possible thing to do, because then that player would be, come July 1st, would be like, well, thanks, guys. It's been a slice. I'm going to go sign over there for $6.5 million a year that you can't give me. Mm-hmm. And so the guy that we gave up the farm for now just signed somewhere else. Now we're stuck like Chuck. We got stuck like Chuck. Now we got no assets, and we got a team that's missing a guy that potentially could be that goal scorer, that, you know, leader, that whatever. And, you know, now we're kind of fumbling around with a little bit of, with pennies to go try and find somebody to try to fill in the hole. That's exactly what I think's going on here. Kevin Hayes, to me, is a filler player. He is not worth $7.25 million a year. He's just not. Okay. I can't believe that this franchise, who just signed Sean Couturier to a huge contract is not building around him. I mean, I'm scratching my head on this here, guys. Please help me to understand this. What is so special about Hayes? What has he done? What has he won? What has he accomplished? What is he like this? I mean, am I missing it? Is he like this Mario Lemieux type, Connor McDavid type guy? I mean, what am I missing here? Right?
I think he was just brought in because essentially he was a guy that AV wanted, and he had success in AV's system, and in order to sign for AV to agree to come here, I think he said, I want you to go out and get this player. And you know, Chuck said, yes, please come, and we will get you Hayes. And that's why they traded for him when they could have waited. They could have waited to free agency, but they went out and traded for him and signed him to whatever he wanted before he even touched the open market.
Exactly. So they bought his rights before he even, So I hereby rescind any of the crow that I've eaten based off of the things that I said after last year, because here we go. We've come full circle, and lo and behold, I was actually right. There's a lot more going on with this team, and there's a lot more going on with than just the coaching. And you can't fire 23 players. You really can't. And to me, that is more of what's going on here per se. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like we touched on it a little bit earlier when we talked about the depth and the types of players that are being drafted to come in here and play for the Flyers. They're not the kind of players that are Flyers. They're just not. I mean, I don't even care what system and what coach you got in here. The identity. See, this is what really upset me the other day when I listened to Claude Giroux's news conference, and he said that they're searching for an identity. Dude, see that? Guess what that is, right? That is your identity. You are a Philadelphia Flyer.
Yeah. 30 years before he came along, they had their identity. They were a hard-nosed bunch of players that maybe not the most gifted one out on the ice, but they darn sure had the most heart of anybody in the league.
Or you left building beat up. You didn't want to come and play the Flyers because they took care of you. They beat you to snot, or hit you or whatever.
Yeah. So that's what I think, maybe not the Broad Street bully knuckle dragging mentality of old, which I would love, but it's you gotta draft the right players, like you said. And I think three teams that really do it, and if you can look, they look kind of like the Oakland Athletics do on some of the smaller aspects of the game that will get you W's and plus minus and other stuff like that. That gets you good players in the long run, and that's Tampa Bay, that's Florida, and I believe that's Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Those are the three for the past maybe 5 seasons, even longer for some, that have just been drafting the right players. Certain players that I've highlighted in my articles and different stuff that I've written in the past, a lot of them end up with those teams, and they just draft the right players. And even later in the rounds, they continue to draft the right players. And even Tampa Bay, especially with finding free agent signings, undrafted players to bring into the system. And now you look at them and they're plus 100 some, for their careers. in the NHL, and they went undrafted because they can see certain aspects in their game that they put a lot of emphasis in to those type players, and they made a roster full of them. And that's why they have had success. And that's why with some of the youth, when Quinville got into Florida and implemented some of the youth that they were holding back and just wanting players to be able to sign free agents in Florida for so many years to be able to put butts in seats instead of building through the youth like they're doing now. And you know, Carolina's doing that with Rob Brindamore.
Yeah.
You're seeing
You win and they will
you're,
come.
you win. How can you get rid of one of the best young goaltenders in Alex and ship him to Detroit? And then bring in two other guys that weren't even on the roster last year and still have the success that they're having. And that's because
and blow up your defense too.
Right. That's because they constantly have a defense that are plus players, and they have youth every season, like a Seth Jarvis that's able to come in immediately after being drafted, or maybe one season after being drafted, and be on the roster, NHL roster. How many years does it take for any player? Isaac Ratcliffe, where's he at? 50-goal scorer. Morgan Frost, where's he at? He's just coming around now. And he was a dual 100-point, back-to-back seasons in the OHL. So there's certain aspects, like I said, of the game that the Flyers need to look at, and I'm going to be highlighting it in some articles coming up. So,
well, that's awesome, man. That I'm all for the articles coming out. You know what I mean? But look, there's so much that needs to go on. There's so much that needs to happen. There's so much that needs to change. It's like, where do you start? It's like, it's a sinking ship now. You're not just, you're not just taking a bucket and throwing it overboard to try to get, you're not bailing anymore now. You're abandoning ship, right? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what needs to go on here, as far as what I'm concerned. Does that make sense? I mean, am I being a little too?
No, I think you're right. I think they need to start and really break it up. And a way they can do it is in this next draft. The Flyers are obviously gonna have a pretty good draft pick at this point in time with the way they keep losing. And if they can't get their stuff together, they could definitely see a top 10 pick for this year. And that's what my next article really dived into that was put out today, actually. And, for some time, like you were saying, the Flyers, in my mind, have been 50-50 when they're drafting inside the top 15. There's been some big time busts. Yeah, probably less. But inside the top 15, we've seen draft busts like Nolan Patrick. We've seen Sam Moran, who's, a great player in my mind, but he's injured. He's injured all the time. Yeah. And we've seen, the leisurely skating James Van Riemsdyk, who's had some success, mostly away from the Flyers. But those guys, second overall, 11th overall, those were misses. Those were big time, especially with Nolan Patrick and Van Riemsdyk, players that we should have hit on and been players that could have changed this franchise, and we didn't.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we didn't. But, in the same token, we have also had Joel Farabee at 14th and 18. We've had Provorov 7th overall and 15. And we had Couturier with the 8th overall selection in 2011, Jeff Carter with the 11th in 03. So we've had some good ones come through, but not changed the face of the franchise. When you're looking at those top 10 picks, those guys that you hope to be here for the next 10 years, you hope to, be hanging on the banners outside. Jeff Carter's made a heck of a career out of it, but we got rid of him because he was too much of a party boy for everybody and all that. But the Flyers, in my mind, need a center. Out of anything, they need a center, and if they're going to draft as high as they potentially might be drafting, I think it's time to go get a center. We talked before where a right-hand shot defenseman would be nice. We don't have a lot in the system, but if we're drafting this high, I think we need a potential scorer. I think we need a potential replacement for Claude Giroux. I mean, he's at the end of his career here. Even if he decides to come back next season, they offer him a contract. It's going to be his last contract potentially. Or
Yeah.
at the end of the season, he could just go and be
Yep.
gone. And who would blame him for another
Right.
season, seeing that they're not winning. And for the
Exactly.
past 15 years, he wasn't able to win here. He's still leading the Flyers in points and goals and everything else, and he's in his 30s. So like it befuddles me why they're still where they are. So I think they do need to have this change of pace and to draft a big time center.
Who do you have in mind?
In my
Your
mind,
article you wrote, the article
I
you wrote,
I do
talked
have
about
one.
just that. That was
Yeah.
released just today because, at this rate, the Flyers keep losing, and it doesn't look like they're going to be doing anything but that.
Right.
Is
I
losing.
see a Connor Geeky in my mind
Yeah.
from the Winnipeg Ice. He's a big player. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. And he has the build of a stereotypical power forward, but he possesses the offensive skill of a more nimble finesse player,
Yep.
which is quite rare in my mind. And he's still 17 years old, but you know, he has hands, he has vision, he has this shooting ability, he has the NHL frame already. He's a center, like I said, and just really, really takes it, and just blows you away if you watch some game tape on him. The only knock on him, scouts say, is his skating. But I would really say, from watching game tape on him, I would say it's there. But he likes to slow the play down. He really
Yeah.
likes to slow the play down. He has the size to do so. People back away from him
That's why.
at that size. And that's
Yeah.
why he could slow the play down. He is a puck mover. He does have the ability to do so, and he takes that ability when he's on a fast break and he's on a breakaway. His speed's there, and this season he has 8 goals, 23 assists, and 31 points in 25 games played. He's a plus 23.
Wow.
His
I mean,
team
that's a
is
point per game.
That's a point per game. His team is 22-2-1 right now. All right. Yes, they have some players on that team. Um, Along with them, they have Matthew Savu, if I'm saying that right. He's a top 5 pick this year. They have Carson Lambos, who was drafted last year, and they have
Yeah.
Connor McLennan of the Flyers, who
Yeah.
is phenomenal numbers this season.
Yeah.
And Geeky's right there with him.
Yeah.
And I believe that he could play sooner rather than later because of his size,
Size. Mm.
and he could potentially be a phantom sooner rather than later if they keep this new rule
Okay.
for the
So,
age.
so
So
yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. So, Flyers need to draft a player that can come in and play right now.
yeah, and they potentially could, but it depends where they're going to fall. If they continue to lose, their pick is only going to get better. And right now, like I said, they're sitting inside the top 10. But if they continue to spiral and they get inside the top 5, then they could potentially have a player to play next season. And they may need him to be if Giroux decides to up and leave and maybe sign with another team, like we said, Ottawa or any potential cup
Anywhere.
contender. Any
Gosh.
potential cup contender that he chooses. I mean, who could blame the guy from wanting to go and find a cup contending team so he can play with them, and have a chance to win the cup.
So a couple of news conferences ago, Giroux was asked if he would be, if now would be, he would be willing to waive his no trade clause or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is before AV was fired, obviously.
Right.
And we touched on it a couple of shows ago where we talked about the fact that Giroux did not continue on negotiations throughout the year, that he stopped negotiations at the summer.
He stopped, yes.
He stopped. That was his decision to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So now with AV not being there, he's been through six coaches now. Giroux has, and his
something like it, yeah.
Right, that's almost one every 2 years on average. He's been there almost 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's one partner every 2.5 years. Right, so you get a coach that's only there for 2.5 years, so they don't quite make it through the third season. You know what I mean? And so, look, Giroux was one of my favorite Flyers, but something seems to be going on here where the core of this team still remains, and yet the coaches just keep getting fired. You had a Stanley Cup winning coach here in Peter Laviolette, and you fired him. You had a Stanley Cup winning coach here in Craig Berube, and you fired him too. Right? I don't think AV was a cup winning coach. I never felt that he was. I never felt that his system, his style of play, or anything like that. I watched it in Minnesota. I watched it in New York. I just don't see it as, you know what I mean? It's
Vancouver. Yeah. For sure. I don't think it was there. But is there something to be said to that? Giroux's still here. They did break up Voracek and him, thankfully, because they were both essentially the same player. I thought I don't care what he's doing in Columbus. Great. I think I could have about 20 assists if I was playing with Line A.
Right.
I'm nowhere near an NHL player. But, to each his own. Good luck, good riddance, whatever way you want to call it. But Giroux is and has been a mainstay here for 15 years. A lot of people like him, and he obviously is producing still, but I don't think he's a Flyers captain. If I'm thinking of a Flyers captain, I'm thinking of Mike Richards. I'm thinking of Keith Primo. I'm thinking of Chris Pronger. I'm thinking of Rick Tocchet. All those guys that are hard-nosed players that go out there every night and lead by example and lay big hits.
Get bloody for your team.
Well, get bloody for your team. Stand up for your team when a dirty play happens. And Eric Lindros, we had a lot of success with those type players, and Giroux is just not that type player. And for the past 15 seasons, we've been to one Stanley Cup in his time here, and really shouldn't even have been there in my mind. Lucked out.
It is what it is.
Yeah, lucked out. I mean, maybe we would have won if we had some better goaltending, but that's a whole nother topic that's been addressed and beaten till it's dead.
True.
Yeah.
I'm with you on the Connor Geeky. I like that. If the Flyers continue to lose, I'm with you on that. I will say this: I have been a little bit more impressed with the draft picks coming from Fletcher than I was with Hextall. The draft picks from Hextall have not really been. There's been too many of them that have just been like, Like we could just rattle them off and be like, yeah, they're still in the system. They're still in the system. Well, why aren't they up yet? Here
Yeah.
we are 5, 6 years later now, and you're still in the system.
Yeah.
Time for you to go.
Well, I think, they're polar opposites of each other. I think where Hextall was able to bring in guys with the front half of the drafts and some big names that were still left on the board that he was able to grab, and undrafted free agents that he was able to sign that were potentially decent players, and it turned out to be some NHL players. Fletcher has come in and had some success in the tail end of the draft with Elliot Dejournay, Connor
The back
McLennan,
end of the draft, the later rounds.
Wisdom in the later rounds. He's scored some pretty decent players, and essentially won this past draft as well, who I highlighted in a previous article recently as well. So I think he's getting a lot of bang for his buck in the tail end. He's had some questionable picks early. In Andre, a miniature defenseman from the Swedish leagues that there was a lot of good players still on the board at that time, but
Yeah.
we shall see. It's a little too early for those to be essentially, labeled bust at this point. But I'm not sure. But I know for one thing, if the Flyers do happen to win a couple of games, and now that they're getting a little healthier, they're still going to be able to have a good draft pick. But with that, I think they need to draft a guy in Rucker McGrody from Team USA's development program, under 18 team. And, he's essentially a 10 to 15 overall pick right now, labeled as. He's 6'1", 205-pound center. Yeah.
Okay.
Got some size, got some, weight on him, some muscle. And essentially, I think this guy is very underrated. He's an elite goal scorer, which would be a nice thing to have on the roster. He tends to utilize
Why do you want to tease me?
Yeah, he tends to utilize his phenomenal puck handling skills to assist as well. So he's a dual threat. And before coming to Team USA, we'll just give some junior growing up AAA teams and stuff in midgets and bantams year. The year before he came to Team USA, he had 82 goals, 78 assists for 160 points in just 63 games played for the Oakland Junior Grizzlies U15 team, AAA. That's 2.5 points per game, and that's a plus 90 on that season before he came to Team USA. So there's no doubt why he got a camp invite there. So if you watch the tape on this guy, it's pretty amazing to watch. He has all the skill in the world, and in 16 games played this year for the U18 team, he has 11 goals, 14 assists for 25 points already. That's a 1.5 per game average, and is a plus 22 rating. So not only can he score, he can defend as well.
Nice. Nice.
So I really like this kid. Originally, he committed to Notre Dame, which is my favorite program. But he has recently switched to Michigan, which seems to be where everybody from Team USA goes now.
Yeah, right.
To have some success. So these are two great young centers that could be drafted by the Flyers this upcoming draft, inside the top 10, essentially. So there's got to be a bright spot to this Steel. There's got to be a bright spot. That's all. I
Because
mean,
that just means, you know what that means, right? That means like another 4 months of wretched losing. That
yeah,
means another 4 months of trying to watch a hockey game for the
yeah,
Flyers. I don't know if I can endure another 4 months after I just watched it for 2 months last year. All I
yeah,
got to say is this: no matter what this team does, there's two things that I hope they do not do, and this will be my last point. I am not, repeat, not a fan of Rick Tocchet as the coach of this team. I understand he's a Hall of Famer for the Flyers. I understand that he was a great player here for Philadelphia, and he was one of the favorite. I loved watching Rick Tocchet go out and play. There's nobody out there that has the tenacity that guy did, and he could put the puck in the net, and he could drop the gloves, and he didn't care. He had no fear.
yes,
But he is not the next coach of this team. He is not the next coach of this team, in my opinion. I do not feel that his system, his style, and his really low winning percentage is what this team needs. Okay?
yeah,
I'm also going to say this as well, too. There's a lot of other names floating around there for head coach and all this other stuff. And I'm going to say it right now. If this team hires Tortorella, I am done as a Flyers fan.
yeah,
Okay? That is, to me, in my opinion, the wrong thing to do to this team. Because as far as I'm concerned, Tortorella is good at getting a team together to play for a season.
mm-hmm.
And that's it. Okay? He does and says what he needs to do to get the team together to play for that season. And then the message gets old because it's all about him. This is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. Okay. We have this platform here, so I can voice my opinion.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, I'm done.
I agree with you. I would not like to see Rick Tocchet be named the next head coach of the Flyers. He has a horrible win percentage for Arizona, and even when
Tampa
he was head
Bay.
coach of Tampa Bay, I mean, if you had all the talent that he had,
0.468 is his winning percentage.
yeah. Bruce Boudreau has what, a 0.67 something?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was
679.
he was out there. Almost 68% of his games, near 1,000 NHL games coached regular season, and he's won 68% of them. Hasn't been able to win the big game, but
well,
he would have been nice to have.
Now. Yep.
He would have been nice to have, but Vancouver snatched him up as we were maybe possibly waiting too long to fire AV, and now we're stuck with, like you said, the Rick Tocchet's, the Tortorellos, Mike Babcock that's been out there. He's resorted to coaching a Canadian university team because of what he did in Toronto. So a lot of bad eggs, and Rick Tocchet, who I like and respect as a player and who was a Flyer through and through.
Yep.
But I wouldn't mind seeing him come back as an assistant maybe, but I'm kind of tired at this point of the Flyers retaining ex-players. I want to see, I thought that was a breath of fresh air when they brought in AV instead of a recycled Flyers player to be named head coach. But I still want to see somebody from outside the organization come in. I just don't know who at this point. I really like Chris Knobloch.
I was just going to say
as a coach.
Yeah.
And when he was with us as the assistant, he didn't really get to implement too much, being under Hackstall, but he's done really well as an assistant for New York and down in Hartford for the Wolfpack, and his team is phenomenal down there. And he's
22 and
developed,
2, right?
yeah, he's developed some amazing, amazing talent throughout the years with Connor McDavid's and everybody. Just the list goes on for miles. Who came through Erie when he was there, and I think he is deserving of a head coaching job, but I doubt it comes here in Philly since they already had him here. Why would he want to come back if they fired him? I don't know. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
the only other name I could think of would be maybe Claude Julien. The reason why he left Montreal was because of his health.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That was mostly the main reason why he left. And I think he's healthy again now. And I guess I would not mind him being the bench boss for Philadelphia at least.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two names that we could at least, if we say we don't want these two guys, we've at least given you two guys that we would like.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. There's just seems to be slim pickings at this point. Obviously, you're in mid-season. It's going to be hard to find somebody. So we shall see. I don't know. If the team wants to continue to lose, then let's continue to lose and go get Shane Wright. But I would hate to see the team continue to struggle until the last 10 games and then go on an 8-game winning streak to
Get out of that
almost
lottery.
get out of the lottery and
Yeah.
almost make the playoffs,
Or
or make the
whatever.
playoffs and get beat in the
Yeah.
first round. If they're going to struggle, then let them struggle and tear this team apart and rebuild from the ground up. And if you really want to try to make something of it, then try to bring somebody in that's going to be able to fix it quickly. But I want them to stay around and not just be here for the season or two like they have been in the past how many years, and potentially be fired.
Exactly.
We all know that the NHL coaching life is not very long, but there's a reason why the Scotty Bowmans of the world and everything were around for so long. They were good at it, and their system works. So if the Flyers can find somebody, I'd rather see them, stick to their guns and keep them for a while.
Exactly. I'm with you on that one, my man. Well, Lance, you did tell us about an upcoming article you got coming in the works, right? Soon, maybe?
Yeah, soon. I just got to sit down and basically type it all out and put it together. I got a lot of thoughts down, a lot of research into it. So we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see what comes of it.
Awesome sauce. Well, why don't you tell the folks where we can find you, where we can get you, where we can reach you, and where we can follow you and get all your great stuff?
Sure. As always, I'm always on Twitter at LNGBASSIST. The number's 39. You can catch all my latest articles on Flyers Nitty Gritty, SteelFlyers.com, and Bleacher Report.
All right, there you go. Thank you very much. You can find me on Twitter as well as SteelFlyers52. You can also check me out on the web at www.steelflyers.com/link/Hockey Writers Inc. Lance, I'll tell you what, my man, another great show. Really appreciate all the hard work you do, all the great articles that you write. Really would like to thank Flyers Nitty Gritty for helping posting us out there and getting us out to the web and everybody else and posting all your articles and everything like that. So thank you very much to them. Would also like to let everybody know that we're going to be still here no matter what. No matter however way this team goes, we're still going to be here reporting it. We'll be looking at the bright side no matter what. So hang tight with us. We're hanging in there too.
How's that swag coming along?
It's coming, baby. Yeah, man. We're trying to get the website up and running on that. Been running into some technical snags and, paperwork and red tape and all other happiness. But we're working on it. We should have swag here, hopefully by the first of the year. I'm hoping we can. It might not happen for Christmas. I'm sorry, but we'll try to have it for the first of the year. So, all right, my man. Can't wait for the next one.
All right.
All right, man. Take care. We'll see you guys soon.
Later.